Next we're going to do the arm setup. The arm setup is very similar to all the others. We've got a series of joints that we want to create a control hierarchy for, and we've got a series of control objects that we want to put in charge of that joint chain. For this one we're going to use a IK-FK switch system, and we're going to use again a tried and true method of creating a triple bone setup. So we've got three essentially sets of arm joints, each one of them having a specific purpose. One is going to be specifically IK, one is going to represent the FK, and then the third one is going to be a slave that's going to be essentially influenced by both of those chains, and with the switch we can tell it whether to be 100% influenced by one or the other, or partially influenced by both, which allows it to create these smooth blends when you're switching. So I've got my controllers connected. We've got a shoulder or clavicle controller, upper arm rotation, lower arm or forearm rotation, the pull vector for the elbow, much like our one we have for the knee, and this one here is going to represent our IK-FK switch itself. So to get started, I'm just going to hide the geometry and the controllers for the time being, and just have a look at the joints. Again, we always want to evaluate those local joint orientations. For an arm setup, I'm going to temporarily detach the arm from the clavicle using Shift P to unparent it, so the shoulder bone is kind of separated. We'll connect that again later. And I'm going to run my joint orient tool under skeleton orient joint options. And for the arm, I'm going to set up the Y as my X. Almost never changes. Generally speaking, the primary axis is always going to be X. In this case, though, I want to switch my Y as my secondary axis, and I'm going to tell Y to align with negative Y, so it's pointing down. Positive Y is up, negative Y is down. So I'm going to hit apply, and that will reorient itself, and you can see now Y is pointing down. Just like we did for the other bones, I'm going to take the end bone and hit it, or set its joint orientation values to 0. That way it inherits the transforms of the parent. And testing wise, if I rotate now, you can see rotate down with this orientation, my down, which is the dominant axis for there, the dominant direction for the arm, is set to positive values. If I rotate it forward in Y, it's a positive value. And negative is reverse. And if I rotate it down or forward in X, it's positive, and if I rotate it out, it's negative. So again, with that specific orientation for the arms, I think that's a good basis as a good starting point. So we're going to use that orientation for all of our joints. Now, I'm going to duplicate my joint chain twice, ultimately. I don't need the hand, the end bone of the hand to be duplicated, so I'm going to, again, temporarily unparent that. So I'm going to select it and hit Shift P. All I'm going to duplicate is this central part here, so the shoulder, elbow, and hand. So with that selected, and while I'm at it, I'm going to turn off my orientations now that I know I've got them aligned properly. Not my local rotation axes display. Oops, looks like I didn't have those selected. There we go. So now it looks a bit cleaner. And yeah, I'm going to select my left up arm and hit Control D twice. So down here, I've got left up arm and then left up arm 1 and 2. So the original chain I'm going to relabel. I'll just do it over here. So double click, add underscore slave. And it's going to copy that underscore slave. Oops. Control C, and paste it to the other ones in that chain. So left arm slave and left hand slave. So this is going to be the slave bone. This is going to be a slave to the other two chains, which are going to be IK and FK respectively. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and label each of those. Okay, so I've got the labeling done: slave, IK, and FK. So each of those are essentially sharing the same space right now. If I select and move, you can see there's my 3 joint chains. Now I'm just going to undo that movement. And I'm actually going to create a layer for each of those just so I can hide and show them, because when it comes to selecting them later, sometimes it can be a pain if they're all visibly in the same place. So I'm going to select each of the groups. So left arm slave through hand, I'm going to come over here to layers, create layer from selected, and name those accordingly. So these are joint layers, so it's going to be arms underscore slave underscore JNT underscore LAY, and I will pause and do the same for the others. Okay, now I got the bones and joints correctly labeled. We will start with the setup. So first thing we want to do is start creating our control objects. So I said we've got FK and IK. So let's start with the IK. I'm going to hide both layers for the arms, FK joints, and the slave, and so that the only thing I've got visible right now is my IK chain. And I'm going to add a IK controller to this using the IK tool. And it's exactly the same version that we use for the leg. By the way, this method, you could also create an IK FK switching system for the leg with the exact same process we're using here if you decided it needed. Same thing with the stretch. If you want to do stretchy arms and stretchy legs, you could use the basis of what we did in the spine and apply that to the joints. It is possible to do. All those different systems can be applied to different pieces. So we're going to go to skeleton, create an IK handle, and go from the shoulder try that again, create IK handle, shoulder to the hand. And that should create our IK effector, which it does. And that's pretty much all there is to it for the IK setup. Now, obviously, we want to give that a proper name. So this will be left underscore arm underscore IK handle. And with that in place, I'm gonna hide that again. Now notice that the IK handle does not get hidden with the joint. That's because it's created after the fact. What I'm gonna do is create a new layer for this. So layers, create from selected, which is my IK controller, and I'm gonna call that one arms underscore IK underscore CTL for control layer. So I'll bring my FK back and my arm controls. And we're going to create our relationship or connection here. So for the arm controls, we are going to use these FK control objects that we've got built, or I've got built already. to manipulate and control each of the joints respectively. We're going to use the exact same system that we use for the head and the neck. So we're going to use that mel command. Now we're going to have to do it 4 times. So another thing, we added earlier this custom tool to our shelf here. If I want to bring a mel command, all I've got to do, or bring it to the shelf, is type it in. So parent-r-s, which definitely gets tedious, having to type that every time. Then just select it, and middle mouse click and drag up to the shelf bar. And what's going to do, it's going to ask you, do you want to save the script as a mel or Python script? I'm just going to use a mel script. And then it generates the script. So now, and if I hover over it, you can see it says parent rs. So I can use that without executing the command down the mel command line every time I need it. So we're going to do the same process that we had to use on the head and neck to make sure that these controllers don't get that weird offset. So first we're going to temporarily parent it to the bone that it's going to be controlling. That exposes the bone's transforms. We are going to reset the transformations, or freeze transformations, I mean, sorry. That will kind of zero everything out. Unparent it, Shift P, and then parent the shape node by selecting the controller, hitting the down arrow to the bone using our mel script. And now we should have a controller that has, not only does it control the object, but because of the script that we're using, it's automatically inheriting the same orientation as the bone itself. So that saves us a lot of time. I'm going to do the same thing here. Temporarily parent, freeze transformations, unparent, select it, hit the down arrow to grab the shape node, shift click the bone, run our script. Test it out, and that's our FK control. And once again, that's going to need to be done on the other side as well. So now that I've got the IK and FK bone set up, now I can set up the connection between them and the actual slave bones. Before I do that, I'm just going to set up a bit of cleanup. I'm going to put these objects on their own layer, label them correctly, and then in the next video we'll pick up and add the section where we will connect the slave bones to this control setup.